Welcome to episode 11 of the Global Exclusive Podcast. I'm your host, Muspel. I'm joined this week by Muspel.
AI Katie is the best tank in the game.
Muspel.
I'm the actual ringleader of the wiki ratings, not track.
Muspel.
Schwan is still the best chainer in the game.
Salien.
I am Spartacus.
And Muspel.
Sakura is a finisher, so we've given her a -5 penalty.
Oh, this is what it feels like in wiki ratings all the time. Well, this week we've actually got a lot of fun stuff for you. We've got the Sakura and Nichol banner version 17 for each of them, I think. We've also got Beatrix and Eiko latents. They did finally come, and surprise, surprise, Beatrix got nerfed.
She's not nerfed, she's adjusted.
All right, adjusted to a lower level. I fixed that technical issue where she did too much damage. We're also going to talk about the Venomous Vines Plus trial, which is a lot of fun. We also got a War of the Visions collaboration with Gilgamesh being the unit released. He's going to be limited, so we're going to talk about him. And we also have a special guest joining us later in the podcast. It's Meetmeonmars. You guys probably know him from his Twitch streams or his Reddit posts, so we're very excited to welcome him on the podcast. And Cotton's got our sponsor this week.
Do you ever feel that there's not enough things to spend money on in Final Fantasy Brave Exvius? Do you always stare at the empty bundle shop, wishing that there was more beast meat to buy using your cold hard cash? Well, the answer is Final Fantasy Brave Exvius War of the Visions, a whole new game filled with high-priced bundles for you to spend on, not to mention new units to pull, new rainbows to chase, and more stuff to spend on. So what are you waiting for? Start spending twice as much today. Final Fantasy Brave Exvius War of the Visions, when wielding in one game just isn't enough.
I think this hits too close to Bharos.
Yeah, I was sweating all the time. I was sweating.
Oh, this is a targeted ad.
Oof.
Man, yeah, these ads are getting too good. They know me too well.
Dead silence. Okay, listen, I need to remember not to cut this out of the pod because silences get cut automatically because this was golden.
No one can freaking talk on this podcast. We have literally
everyone.
Can we ban Satan from this podcast? You guys, we've done it. We broke Hazard. He made a dirty joke.
I was being sarcastic, you dicks.
Okay. Alright, let's be honest. Bharos, Hazard, have you guys spent on War of the Visions yet? Okay.
To actually spend on War of the
yes.
Visions, I actually had to start playing it, right?
Well,
not necessarily. You could donate to my cause, always. And I will play in your stead.
Yeah, not gonna happen.
I will be your whale by proxy.
This week, Hazard is sponsored by Cottonseed.
I would make the worst decisions just to spite her.
No, you'd save her for tactics banner.
I'm doing that anyway. It's gonna be bad.
Of course.
Wait, is there even will there be a tactics banner in War of the Visions?
Oh yeah,
they have a tactics banner, and like literally Orlando is the strongest unit in the game.
Yeah.
It's like Hazard's wet
Oh
dream.
god. It sounds like 2018.
I don't.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. I don't even like Orlando.
You don't even like Orlando?
No,
the game's so easy.
That's exactly why I didn't like him. He made the
He
game
only
too
likes
easy.
using Final Fantasy tactics, like Marchie.
What the heck? Marchie. Wait.
March? I don't know. How do you pronounce that name?
I say Marsh.
Yeah, isn't it Marsh?
I don't know. There's a CH, not an SH. I don't know.
Listen, that game is not important enough to even argue about, so we can move on.
You know, should we get into the actual banner now?
Whatever, I guess.
Introducing today's new War of the Visions banner with Orlando.
So now for first unit of this week, and most interesting, we have Nichol of the Epsilon star, who now is wearing edgy black clothes. And this might be a bit controversial, but I'm just going to say, I think Nichol has the most complete and robust support kit out of any dedicated support in the game currently.
Ooh, that's a hot take, isn't it?
Is it
Muspel
really?
rebuttal.
I think that he mostly feels like Ignis, but without the setup. No,
Yeah,
it's not a perfect comparison. He doesn't have resistance to every element, but he does have a spammable 3k barrier. He's got 50% mitigation on turn 1. He's got the LB fill and a bunch of other fun stuff on top of that. And of course he has 30% type mitigation for physical and magical. He's just really solid all around.
Yeah, I think just because offers the most doesn't always mean that he will slot the best into teams, though, because with his kit being very general, he has more overlap with top tier units of other roles.
I think that for me, that turn 1 general mitigation 50% is really nice because you get units like Charlotte or other units that can't do it turn 1. It's really nice to have that. But you're right. I think he does have a lot of overlap with other units, which makes him bad according to Muspel, right? Just like Sylvie. Just kidding.
I think that with buffers, it's part of the problem that Nichol has is that so much of what makes him good is tied up in that 50% general mitigation, which you can get from tanks. And I mean, ideally, you have Cecil using his LB on turn 1 or something like that. And if you have that, then Nichol isn't doing a whole lot extra above and beyond that. Like the type mitigation is good, the resists are good, the LB fill is nice. It's maybe not worth a unit slot though.
I mean, everyone's got Cecil, so no one needs Nichol.
Yeah. Generally, Cecil does actually need to cover on turn 1 though.
Well, I tend to use him as a provoke tank.
Oh, you're a 2-tank intellectual. I forgot.
I think when you can use single tank, like if you're using, say, an evade provoke breaker, that he is very good in that support slot, yet because he immediately gets that sort of full strength mitigation and buffs turn 1, and then he can also, with his unlocked heroic stance, take some of the burden off of your healer on some turns, allowing them to use more support. And I could even see for some fights, if you had something like Nichol plus Awakened Warrior of Light, you could potentially even cut a healer entirely and just have those two keeping the team healthy.
That's I don't know. I really don't know.
I mean, going back to the Warrior of Light thing, I still think the Warrior of Light, Chao, and Ignis team would be the best one because it cover heals and buffs and everything more.
One of these units is not like the others.
And listen, one thing that's the problem with buffers, and we all know this, is that the problem is that they are hard to slot into a team. Like, okay, so you don't always have to run 2 tanks, you don't, and you can usually actually also get away with 1 tank even on the harder trials, but if you are running 2 tanks, or if there's some weird requirement in the fight, like you have to do, I don't know, Mirage, then it's really hard to slot in a buffer. And they are the first ones that lose their slot, right?
I would agree with that for the most part.
Yeah.
I think that of the major roles, the least important ones in order are Summoners don't matter.
Then
you have
Summoner's not a role. Let's.
Hey, Eiko would like to argue.
It's a damage.
Eiko
type.
is a healer, not a summoner.
Gumi and Alum think that Summoner is a role, and it's not. But let's just mention it. It's not needed ever. Second role, finishers, they can be used, they're not necessary. Third role, I think buffers they're way above finishers or summoners in that they're actually pretty useful, but they aren't essential a lot of the time. They're nice to have, but like you said, they're usually the first role that gets cut if you need something else, because you can't really afford to replace your healer or your tank generally.
And actually, a lot of tanks do cover the buffer roles, like Alfonso does mitigation and defense and spirit buffs. Cecil does everything. Warrior of Light does mitigation and defense buffs.
Yeah, I would say the buffs themselves are actually really important, especially these days. But buffer is the role that has its functionality most eaten by other roles.
It's Alim's way of, I think, power creeping non-DPS roles is that they thought, hey, let's make tanks and healers better by taking away the supports role. Because before we had, like all of the, like Dr. Iden is literally a support and a healer rolled into one unit. Same with Cecil and same with Warrior of Light to a certain degree. And now we're getting, it just feels like these buffers are losing their spot. And no matter how good Nichol is, I don't think it's ever... Like, we would never recommend this to a new person. Oh, yeah, you better pull for Nichol, right? It doesn't make sense.
But I'm going to say the biggest problem here is that general mitigation got owned by so many other units, most particularly, of course, the tanks, because that was what the buffer was for before. Like, remember when MS Nichol came out? Like, he was a beast because he had this 50% mitigation that nobody else had, right?
Yeah.
But since that is owned by everyone else, buffs are easy to cut down on. Like you can clear. You're not gonna die if you cut your buffs from 200% to 130%, for instance. You're not gonna die. That it's like you're gonna take a bit more damage. So that's very easy to cut, and a lot of units provide like 120, 130 to stats.
And then another thing is that like when you usually want to bring a buffer for a fight, it's because the fight has dispel. So you need a buffer who has pretty much spammable mitigation and buffs. And the thing is that Nichol's 50% mitigation is either locked to his cooldown or his actually pretty costly limit burst. So compared to someone like Ignis who can just spam it every turn after an unlock, it's not really such a good idea to bring Nichol over Ignis for the dispel heavy fight.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, I've gotten a lot of use out of Ignis, especially looking at just like my save teams on FFBE equip. And I think for a lot of those, I would be happy to replace Ignis with Epsilon Nichol, and it would feel like an upgrade. But it's not like a major one, and yeah, again, it's not going to be useful for all fights and all team comps.
I do think that the cost on Nichol's limit burst isn't a huge issue, because he has that skill that fills the LP gauge by 12 and he can dual cast it, and it also gives a 3k barrier, so you're probably spamming that at least once per turn anyways. So even with just a little bit of LB gearing, he probably has his LB up every 3 turns at least, maybe every 2 turns if you're lucky on drops, or gear him pretty heavily for LB.
Plus, every turn he has a 50% chance of filling 3 to 4 crystals for the entire team, just passively.
Yeah, he's definitely, I would say he's probably the second best buffer in the game right now. I think Luna Freya is slightly better because she's unique in a way that he isn't. Nichol combines a bunch of support things that are good to have, but every individual part of his kit can be found somewhere else. Luna Freya, nobody else does magic mitigation as well as she does, or at least not with full uptime. There's a couple tanks that have big cooldowns, but they can't maintain it like she can.
And as since I would say magic mitigation gets like more important in future trials because the bosses start doing uncoverable magic hits.
Yeah.
And she also has her Imbue and Imperil, her AoE Imbue and her Imperil move are on the same cooldown ability, which is a lifesaver for a lot of dispel heavy situations, which you would take a buffer for.
And there's so many other things in her kit that are just, they're easy to overlook, but like she has an ability that dispels the team, which is nice. I mean, it's not the kind of thing that you love to use all the time, but it's a good thing to have in your back pocket.
So this is a really cool banner that contains Cecil and Luna Freya. This is so cool to talk about. Yay!
And her LB deals damage, and it deals damage really slowly, which is good for those really annoying kill with LB missions.
She's super good. I use that dispel today because the first boss imbues your team with ice and then makes himself immune. I dispelled with her and kept going. It was amazing. She's so good. So pull for Nichol.
Dead silence. Okay, listen, I need to remember not to cut this out of the pod because silences get cut automatically because this was golden. But okay, I want to say something about Nichol's imbues and imperils though, because I think Dream, you already mentioned it. The fact that he doesn't have it on the same skill, that sucks. But also, he has really low imperils. What's up with that?
I mean, 80% isn't that bad, but
no, it's shit. Absolute garbage. I'm not even trying to be funny. It is
on
garbage.
A support unit is pretty bad, just because if you think about other support units, like what's her name, the Luca, lovely Luca, no, whatever Luca is. Sweet Luca. There we go. Sweet Luca and the man, I'm so bad with things. Anyways, it's generally 80%. I think is really really bad. I'm terrible.
Yeah, so
today.
now that we have discussed Cecil, Luna Freya, Nichol, and a ton of other units, maybe we should move on.
Can I just add one more thing? Like, you compare that to Sweet Luca, but like, what about Sylvie? Like, Sylvie has imbues, but no Imperials at all.
Yeah, but
Yeah, but
Sylvie's a
Sylvie's
trash
shit.
tier unit. Yeah,
Sylvie's
exactly.
trash.
No, if you think Sylvie's bad, you do not belong on the ratings team. End of story. Let's move on before we start more arguments.
Yeah. So I want to introduce the next unit because it's a unit that I like a lot. It's the new Sakura of the Delta Star. And I like Sakura a lot as a unit. I remember getting the original Sakura back in the day when she was new and enjoyed her for a lot of trials. And this Sakura...
So
Yeah.
Bharos, what you have to do is you have to take the Roy Mustang segment from the last episode and just copy paste that in here, except just dub over with the word Sakura anytime we say Roy.
And change fire to lightning.
Because they're the exact same unit.
They really are. And you know what makes me sad about that is that one thing that Sakura's always had in many of her iterations, or she doesn't have that many iterations, but she has a couple, is that she always has provided a support kit to her team. I mean, most notably, we're going to talk about Vines soon. I'm going to tell you how I used Blossom Sage Sakura in Vines. But the thing is, this Sakura just follows... I mean, she is Roy, right? She follows the Regina template spot on and the Noctis template spot on. She has the Pentacast, she has the killers and stuff like that. But she has nothing for your party. And that made me sad. Okay, she does have resistance.
She does have a bit, like, she does 65% lightning, light, and dark resistance buffs. That's the thing.
Like, you want to know how similar they are? They both have an ability that does the following three things for the same MP cost. 80% reduction to lightning resistance, 50% mitigation to self for one turn, and restore MP to self. Exact same skill on both of them.
I'm sorry, you're wrong, because Roy has fire resistance.
I think Regina has a very similar one as well.
Yeah.
Just way back when. I mean, technically from JP, Sakura did actually come before Roy, so Roy is the
Yeah, I'm not saying that Sakura copied Roy. I'm saying that Alim needs to stop copying any units.
And Roy is cooler than Sakura.
At least compared to Roy, though, Sakura's Limit Burst does actually chain. Like, it's 20 hits, true. They're nicely evenly spaced, evenly weighted.
And I mean...
They will actually chain.
Yeah, and all the things we said about Roy still hold true for Sakura as well, whereas she's going to be really good for Dark Visions. She's also like, she has the proper formula compared to Roy, which is, I still think, important to say, meaning that you can actually use her as a solo damage dealer, even if you can provide support chain. She's still going to chain half of the turns, and if you can provide support chains on some of the turns, she's still going to do a decent amount of damage. So it's a fun unit, but I hate the sprite, and I absolutely hate the fact that they took out what made Sakura units always unique. And that's the fact that she could always do stuff for your team.
What did they do with this time of the round? Like, both Sakura and Nichol just got gutted in terms of design.
Sorry,
and sprite.
I'm just looking at the sprite for the first time. Is
Epsilon,
she carrying
Nichol.
Is she carrying an axe? Is that a fucking axe?
No, it's just a horrible version of her normal staff.
But wait, she can equip axes. Why can she equip axes?
Wait,
guys,
she can? Oh.
Guys, this is Alim. Have you seen their recent unit designs? Like Pwn. Have you seen Pwn's Limit Burst? Okay. Pwn's CG animation. Watch that. Then you understand.
As I said.
No one has ever accused Alim of having good unit designs. Never.
Well, you know what? They have made some excellent unit designs. This just isn't it. That's what I'm going to say. Because Sakura looks like some weird cat ninja, and it's just looking horrible. And Nichol is looking like he's at the wrong fucking masquerade party.
He probably went into Hot Topic at a wrong time of the year or something.
Yeah.
Okay, I actually think this is the best looking Sakura version we've got.
Hold up. No.
Whoa. Dude.
That should tell you how bad the rest are.
Grimlord Sakura is probably the best.
Okay, actually, yes. Grimlord is better.
Actually, read this in the background story.
Web.
This actually
just for the spider hanging.
This explains Alim's rationale. Sakura, clad in an outfit of the Orders. Eldor's designer of military wear created this outfit with the image of a great witch's black cat in mind. That is in her background story.
That's even worse. That makes it worse. So it doesn't make it any better.
The Eldor designers that are to blame. Not
Well, I
the
mean-
villain designers.
Wait, all the orders have cat-like designs though in their armors, right? There's the fat scorpion dude. Like Hyo is what, a panther, shit like that, right?
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
I think his name means leopard or something.
Yeah, whatever. Cat, weird cat. So now they have another cat. But aren't all of them like animal themed in one way or another, right?
Oh,
So-
I don't,
Yo,
I mean,
What
Xeno
about
is the
you?
bug man.
All right, so
Yeah,
actually,
what's Zapan, the dude that kicks Diego? What's his animal? Yeah, maybe this is actually not true.
Distort, you mean?
Distalk.
Yeah, so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're not animal themed.
okay, actually,
Yeah, I don't think that.
I have to do a retake
Fun
because
tangent.
this actually does remind me of no one can freaking talk on this podcast. We have literally-
everyone.
We have done nothing but interrupt each other constantly for the last 5 minutes straight.
That's actually true.
But I do want to say that actually Sakura's reminds me of like a Spider-Man 3 Tobey Maguire. So I take it back. This is actually a terrible Sakura sprite.
where
Yeah.
have you listened to Nichols, okay? Nichols was created with the image of a young, charismatic commander. Just one that came out from Hot Topic.
Yeah, definitely one that came out of Hot Topic.
So we should call this the Hot Topic banner then.
It really is the hot topic.
Yeah, it really is. It
Yo,
really
Okay,
is.
hang on.
2000s
Yeah.
Hang on,
2000s
the,
ones
la-
are
the
fashion
last sentence of Nicole's bio is that despite the care and efforts put into its creation, the designer never got to see Nicole wearing it. I think that's because Sakura murdered the designer after she saw her outfit.
Yeah. Also, like, why did she color her staff black? Like, is that something you do when you get this black outfit? You also color your
No,
staff?
maybe they got really edgy. Maybe
Yeah.
it's Sakura's that time of her age. Like she's like in her teens right now, maybe.
Yeah, like around 750 years.
That almost went a very poor direction, Shadow.
I knew you'd point that out.
Yeah, just speaking
Sakura
of the
feels-
staff. Just speaking
Sakura
of the staff
feels
name
some-
though.
And I'm not gonna look forward to editing this.
Oh, it's
It's
so
like when
bad.
two people are trying to go past each other and they both step left and then they both step right.
Oh man.
But seriously, the background story is just hilarious this time. Sakura feels somehow liberated when she wears it, making her want to burst into laughter for no apparent reason.
Yeah, she's Tobey Maguire in
Yeah,
Spider-Man
this
3.
is so stupid. I can actually see that, Hazard. I can see her like doing that weird fucking song and dance in that weird ass movie.
Still
Yeah.
a better story than season 3.
Oh
Yes.
gosh,
Oh,
they
God.
That's
have,
not a high bar.
they have really given up in season 3. Really given up.
The new JPCG unit isn't even any better. Like she's playing piano for the first 15 minutes, and then suddenly she's like a katana wielding fucking Sephiroth clone.
Okay, but nothing
And
is
listen,
worse.
stop spoiling this great story.
Nothing is worse than CG Pone.
Boom.
This is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life.
No, like, but apparently from listening to the JP chapter, like, that bit was set in a school, okay? She's a school kid.
Of course.
Oh yeah, Anime Schoolgirl season 3. That's what I really want.
Yeah. Okay. Let's just put it out there. Season 3 is absolute horse dick. Okay, like please, someone do something about it.
Also, the story event is terrible, and I had to run the bonus stage 4 times because it was so buggy, it kept kicking me out and not giving me rewards. So it's awful all around.
I haven't even
See,
started it
Hazard,
yet.
that happens when you use an iPhone.
Okay, let's talk about the limited unit, which is unfortunately limited. I'm really sad it is, but it's Gilgamesh, aka Darkwing Duck in metal armor.
And it's really surprising to me that they took a unit from, what is it, Final Fantasy 3 and they made him limited.
I'm telling you,
Right.
once you see the duck face, you'll never unsee it again. That's right. But the unit itself is actually really, really good. He
Oh god,
does.
Hazard,
the-
why do you do it? Now I can't unsee it. Damn it,
I told you.
Hazard!
I have entered your nightmares.
Quack.
Yeah.
Quack.
It's a
Quack's
horrible
like-
sprite though. I don't know what they did with his face. It's
I don't
weird.
know. It's definitely not worse than the chair that follows CG Rain around, but it's close.
Yeah.
But he actually is on par with Edward in damage, unless you can provide Edward a 120% peril from an external source. But he is locked to ice. He looks like a hybrid unit at first, but he actually has a choice between full physical abilities or full magic abilities. His magic damage is much, much worse than the physical. But he does have one hybrid ability, and that's his limit burst. So, but he's a really, really fun unit. He actually has a bunch of cool things on his in his kit that can help the party. Plus, he's got an AOE MP drain for Arena. That's always fun.
Oh
Yeah.
God! Imagine all the whales. I mean, you didn't mention the best part of Gilgamesh, which is his STMR.
Oh, his STMR is fantastic. It's basically Nagi's STMR, but with 20 extra attack and magic percentage attached to it.
It's
So,
literally
It's a whale's banner.
So like a slightly better version of something that's already really good.
yes. Yeah, Nagi STMR is already one of the top, 5 or 6 probably STMRs in the game right now.
Listen, speaking of Arena, when are they gonna make the CG unit that has LB at start of battle that drains everyone's MP? That's what I want to see. That's a
Do not
quality
give
ass.
them
Barrows,
ideas.
don't stop,
Can we
giving
we
people
ban
ideas.
Satan? Can we ban Satan from this podcast?
Yes.
No, we just need
It is Good Friday.
the start of battle field limit burst that does AoE death.
Not AoE death, AoE kill.
oh yeah,
Oh,
because
God.
death is resistible.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you can just equip a safety bit on everyone. You're fine.
People die when they're killed.
AoE snort. AoE snort.
Yeah. It's like, but that would actually be cool because that would make Arena
No,
enjoyable.
no, it wouldn't.
Bharos, stop!
Yeah, all right, Bharos, this is congratulations. This is your last episode.
Hey, Gumi,
Podcast.
I would
Welcome
wail
back
the
to
fuck
One
out
Clip
for such a
Simulator.
unit.
Actually, before
Okay.
Barrows leaves, we have to ask him, since Gilgamesh is on a limited banner, is Barrows planning to pull?
Well, okay, you know what? That's an excellent question. Okay,
Yes,
and,
he's
and it
gonna do
has
it.
a complex answer. So first of all, I actually shittered Gilgamesh in War of the Visions and went all in for him, and he's like a really expensive unit. We don't have to talk about War of the Visions. So I was kind of feeling it would be really cool to have Gilgamesh in FFBE as well. But I have been enjoying my Zidane so much that I've actually chosen to, you know what? I'm not going to pull for any more DPS units for a while.
Let's see you
Oh,
say that
no.
on Monday when the banner comes live, because I think
Yeah.
your team might change.
Let's
What
see
if
what's
you
going to
do it
happen
for
with
free?
the free 10 pull.
Oh, I'm gonna get
Yeah.
2 of them for free. I'm gonna get
Yeah,
2.
but listen.
Yeah.
Okay, if you pull a Gilgamesh of the free 10+1, it would just be stupid not to pull 12k in his banner to just get him, though. Because
That's how they get you, Bharos. Literally they design it for that. So they get you.
I mean, go ahead, Gumi. Like, give me one Gilgamesh. I dare you. Do it.
That's why they gave us an Omni Prism the week before Ed came out.
And even better,
Prison? What
you-
omniprison?
you shouldn't pull just for Gilgamesh. You should pull for 4 of them, so you can get 2 of his STMRs
Oh yes.
with STMR tickets.
Oh,
They can't stack,
smart.
but think about it. Nagi STMR and Gilgamesh STMR on the same unit, 100% attack, 100% magic, 100% true will to
Oh.
both. That is sexy.
That's
That
a wet
is-
dream.
Just need
Really nice, though.
more good
Are we
trooper
about to
wheel
hear that
hybrids.
zipping sound from Shadow Walker again?
Shadow, get your boner down.
Imagine it having Nagi STMR, Gilgamesh STMR, and 2 Malphacy STMR on one
Yes.
unit.
See, I'm already there. I already have a Nagi STMR. I have 2 Malphazi STMRs, and now I want to pull for Gilgamesh just for this.
So, speaking of Gilgamesh's actual kit, I think that when you compare him to Ed, like we said earlier, the damage is pretty similar. I think I prefer Ed overall because Gilgamesh is locked to ice, like hard lock. His chaining moves have ice built into them. He does have a little bit of utility, like he can do 20% AoE mitigation, which doesn't matter. He can heal for 4k, which he can multicast, could be useful in a pinch. And he has a single target cooldown that fills an ally's LP gauge, but it's 99 turns, so really you use it once per fight. So
I actually
a
do
little
like
bit
that he's got
utility there.
70% attack. He does have a 70% attack break and 65% AoE defense break, which can be useful as well.
In a pinch, but I feel like you're probably running a dedicated breaker, so it has to be a pretty specific scenario for that to come in useful.
Oh, for sure.
But yeah, I think overall he's definitely strong, but I feel like if people pulled for Ed, then they don't need Gilgamesh, and if they didn't pull for Ed, then it means they shouldn't pull for Gilgamesh because they don't need a damage dealer.
That's some interesting logic there. But I will say, have you considered the fact that I can now use my 2 Beowulf STMRs on Gilgamesh?
Have you also considered the fact that I could just simply be a whale wanting the best STMRs in the game?
I mean, why use Beowulf STMRs when he's just a physical attacker?
Because I need someone to use them. I need somebody.
But but here's the added benefit of Gilgamesh. If you give him hybrid weapons or hybrid gearing, then you could take him from Moon and you can go into another trial without having to switch a single gear.
Oh, okay.
Hazard.
Now you're speaking my language. You're gonna hear some unzipping on my end now.
but okay,
I mean,
I'm
no,
in the
you-
same
you
boat
just
as you,
need-
Hazard.
Like,
You
you
guys-
just
we-
need Fire Whip on someone else on Moon, and
Oh
then
my
you
God.
can clear Moon, right?
You guys, we've done it. We broke Hazard. He made a dirty joke.
Wait. Oh yeah, that's true. Actually, I didn't even notice.
All right. Good night, everybody.
But
Oh,
I'm in
man.
the same boat, Hazard. I just want to have use for my Kurosama STMRs, and I know they're not even that good on Gilgamesh, but like I need to put them on someone.
Can relate.
Whale issues.
I mean, they
No
it really is
longer.
a
I'm
real
no
issue.
longer a whale. Hey, I'm free to play nowadays.
Nowadays.
X-Whale.
Sure.
Yeah, it's like
So the other thing that happened this week is we talked about these in last week's episode because they were announced, but then they got delayed. We got the latents for Eiko and Beatrix, and their Eiko got a passive and nothing else. She didn't get any active skill, which is very strange, and the passive doesn't really do anything for her. So there's not really anything to say there.
She
And then-
remains in the dumpster where she belongs.
she got a
Yeah.
cooldown that's also terrible.
Nope, she only got a passive. She didn't get anything else.
Did she get a cooldown? I thought she
No,
did.
only the
Oh,
passive.
there's a joke here that I'm missing, and it's being whooshed over my head.
Oh, okay.
Something about how it being so bad is practically unmentionable, and probably not
I've
worth
been
talking
bamboozled.
Oh man. I
Can we talk
believe
about
cotton
Beatrix
tactics-
though? Can we talk
And
about
then-
Beatrix?
Beatrix
Well, we're talking about
is-
Eiko. Give her 5 more seconds, because like
Yeah,
otherwise,
poor Eiko. Like
Because
we're
otherwise-
all
Eiko-
doing
Eiko
her
was a
dirt.
healer
Okay.
who is mildly useful. She used to be kind of handy back in the day because she can fill the Esper gauge while healing, and sometimes we would get bosses that had missions like evoke 37 Espers, and she was nice for that. But
37
nowadays there are better
It's
options.
like Gumi's taking notes. They're like, this is genius.
There was stuff like evoke 3 different Espers, and it was
Yeah.
such a pain.
Oh yeah. I was just like, what is my purpose? It's like you complete Esper missions. Oh my god.
Yeah,
Yeah, but she got power crept there because Morgana is the go-to now.
You know what though?
What is
Like,
my purpose now? By Echo asks, and I answer, go to the Trust Coin shop.
Yeah.
have you guys seen the video of the Ganon funeral where the guys are dancing with the casket?
Yes. Who
Eiko.
hasn't?
Eiko is in that casket. So R.I.P. Eiko. We can move on now.
Okay, now we can talk about Beatrix.
Beatrix is a chainer. She deals damage that's like a little bit under Shuin, and that's about it.
You had to mention Schwinn. You could go one freaking episode.
Every opportunity he has to make this horrible unit sound better.
We should-
he takes.
We should just, Bharos, when you edit this, you should just bleep it out as if he's cursing.
Yes. I should actually. You know what? I wonder if there's a plugin that can just look for any occurrence
Specific
of a
word.
Muspel says. Yeah, and just like bleep it.
So the technical issue that they fixed with Beatrix was apparently that her finishing damage was too much, way too much. But the problem is it also affected her chain damage because she could cap her chains with finisher. So without that availability, or they basically nerfed that damage a lot. And so it's almost no difference in DPS between just doing her chaining moves and trying to chain cap again.
Which is a shame.
To be fair, there did seem to be an actual technical issue around her six times chain cap and true dual wield passives, but that's not.
Yeah, they shuffled some stuff around so it was on different skills. I don't think we may never know like what the specific issue was there unless they tell us.
It's the
But
one where
I
the
guess it
amount
was
of
bugged
passives
somehow.
on a skill.
But I think Sycidus said that, or Sycidus, or I guess pronounce his name, said that
Slime.
the slime man,
The slime,
he's-
the wiki slime.
yeah, the wiki slime said that actually there is an actual cap, or at least
They're
she didn't
more
reach
like
it.
Guidelines.
Yes, than actual rules. So that's basically Beatrix. The problem with Beatrix is 20 billion damage turn is still great. She's got 120% AoE light and para, which can be very useful. She's also a pretty decent breaker AoE. She can do 70% of all and 74% single target with 30% mitigation. So she's still very useful in that way, but the problem is, in order to get her to be a viable damage dealer, you have to enhance her and then do latents. And unfortunately, at this point, 20 billion damage isn't going to do it for us. It's just it's a little too late.
There could be
I still did it.
support for coming back to
there.
the game after a break, and she could be a good investment for them. But it's just one of those things where if your damage dealer is falling a bit behind, Beatrix could be a nice upgrade if you don't want to pull on somebody new. But otherwise, she's not shaking up the meta. This is what we see with enhancements and latents for damage dealers all the time. They're fine. They're not setting the world on fire.
Yep, that's basically it. I still did it because I like her, and so I'm going to use her.
And you can still use her if you like her. Like,
oh
she's
yeah,
not
she's
unusable.
great. But I would say for the average
in the
player,
top 10
not
for
worth
damage.
it.
Just.
I mean, so I wanted to add one thing about Beatrix is that she still has, like, for a returning vet, the whole thing of, she breaks, she finishes, and she chains. So if you're like a returning person without any up-to-date damage deals, or if you're a new player, like, this isn't a bad unit at all. It's just, for us, it's a bit of a disappointment because we've seen what she could have been if they didn't quote-unquote fix the bugs.
Yeah, but that's the mentality Esther users have had like for a year now.
I just think that if we never knew the whole bug or wrong copy pasta that they put on the news, we would have been so happy with these latents, but now we just feel disappointed.
Yeah.
And I don't...
So
It probably is a wrong copy pasta. Like, they would have just forgotten about the 50% damage. It all depends on that finishing skill.
I feel like it was a wrong copy pasta. That's what it gets. That's what I feel like.
I mean, there's a pretty good
Yeah.
chance they didn't realize how much damage she did until the people in the community actually calculated it.
So we blame Nexus.
Well,
Yes.
that's always a safe bet anyway.
Yeah.
So
And Dream
I just wanna-
and Shadow.
I want to ask a mechanical thing about her kit that someone else might know. So is it possible to do half her damage, but also use her as a breaker? By, she has W cast now, right?
Yes, but only after an unlock.
You'd have to use a really good unit like Sylvie to break turn 1.
A really good unit like Sylvie.
Yes.
or the new Nicole of the Epsilon star.
Yeah.
Yes.
Turn one
He can
breaks.
turn one attack and magic break.
Yeah, so in the right team comp, she can be a very good breaker. I think her damage craters immensely, though, if you use her as a breaker full time.
Yeah, I mean, it's simply half, right? It's just, or even more.
At that
Yeah.
point, she's basically just a support chainer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you don't have to say that, because, like, if her damage tanks like 8 billion, she still does enough to probably beat Vines within the turn limit, and you get a breaker with it as
my
well.
God.
Hey, this sounds like a clear I need to try.
As a breaker, she does probably about as much as Esther. So yeah, support chainer.
There we go.
Oh my god. Okay. Well, we just mentioned Vines, so I guess we can move on to Vines now. So this week we got a new trial called Scorn of the Venomous Vines of Death. And it's
Scorn
basically...
of the cigarettes, scorn of the... Oh
Marlboro,
god, they've hurt so
The
much.
Marlboro Red trial.
It's basically... Yeah, it's basically a harder trial of the older one. I mean, technically. But I think we...
I mean, wait.
So it's
That's the
basically
entire
a
point.
trial.
Hold
The
on.
only reason that I say that is because I remember this being so much harder in the original version, and now we get to here, and because we have all of these ridiculous units, I finished it in like 5 turns, like all together. So the first phase took 3 turns, the second phase took 2 turns. So it just felt a bit silly that this was what I was looking forward to, I guess.
So the main issue I think that a bunch of people are going to run into if they're looking for this fight to be hard is that a lot of the challenge of the fight is wrapped up in the second battle with the mini Bharos that just start to deal crazy damage. On turn 2, they do huge AoE damage, and then on turn 3, they'll nuke the shit out of your tank. But nowadays, a lot of people may have damage dealers that can just blow them up before that happens, or they might have a huge magic mitigation cooldown from somebody like Cecil or Charlotte or whatever that can just keep the team from getting wrecked by that.
And I think that's the other thing. We've already gone to a point in our, I guess, power creep that we have all of these tools to make this so much easier. Like, I'm going to guarantee you Muspel probably use Xuan to completely negate all of the AoE damage that's supposed to hurt.
Oh,
So
Of course he did.
A
and then
foregone
there's
conclusion.
Edward, who can probably burst down all the babies by turn 2 and the big mama like
Can't-
in the second
Can't
fight. So
confirm.
exactly.
Can't
So it's
confirm.
like the DPS units that we've already power creeped everybody. We got Cecil. Like if you have Cecil, I know everyone does. Everyone who's a real player has Cecil.
Yeah. Okay, Shadow. I just want to say fuck you. But okay, I mean, the thing is, I hear what you're saying about DPS. I do, but this is really not a DPS trial, though. To be honest, because a lot of like Nexus did it. Hey, Nexus, Elena is the best unit in the game. Nexus did it in 6 turns with Elena. Just saying.
Narrator, she wasn't.
No, but I agree with Bharos. Like the main challenge for this trial isn't like during the fight itself. The main challenge for the new Marble trial is actually surviving the preemptive. Because in the preemptive turn, he does a damage over time. He basically applies the damage over time on your team. Full stats, no breaks. And you basically have to either figure out how to live through it on turn 1 or recover from it.
Yeah, what I did
That's
is
the
I
challenge.
sacrificed basically everyone but my tank and healer and just raised them up on the next turn.
That's what I did too.
He gives you this huge amount of damage that you can't mitigate, preemptively, and then he follows it up the next turn with an AOE fixed damage, I believe. That I think you can mirage, but basically everyone's dead, so you're not miraging it. So a lot of times your units are gonna die and then maybe die a second time. So you can use items like Rico's wingsuit to help mitigate that. That's pretty nice. Or Guts comes in handy as well.
Yeah, it would have been a fun trial if I didn't use Edward, Cecil, and AWOL, but I did.
It is possible to live through the dot. Your chainers are almost definitely going to die unless you have Shuen, but the rest of your team.
Yeah, I was just waiting for it.
I had everybody with like 1500 to 2000 SPR, and then I did a 2k barrier from Fulka and 50% general mitigation from Cecil, and everybody lived. I also used
just that?
cover.
No, it doesn't take much to survive the DOT because I
was being sarcastic, you dicks.
Okay. But my Edward,
I mean, he only had 1.5k spirit with every unit, a 50% mitigation turn 1, and a 2k barrier turn 1.
Oh.
I mean that's
it's
still
easy,
pretty
guys.
slim, okay?
Easy clap.
I mean, to be
and-
fair, I had the similar amount of stats. So I thought of
Listen, okay. So I actually want to talk about the vines because I had some serious problems. Or I'm not going to say serious problems. I had some issues with vines. First,
I'm so surprised
I didn't have.
about this. You had
No, but
issues with the trial?
Yeah. Okay, shut up.
Sorry.
Okay. Issue number 1, I didn't have reflect ring, and that was horrible.
Why didn't you bring Carbuncle?
Oh no, I did, but I didn't have reflect ring. So of course I had to have someone using reflect on my
I didn't
tank.
have reflect ring, so
Yeah.
But Bharos, if you use Shuen, then you only have 2 turns in the fight anyway.
Yes.
Duh.
Yes. I know.
Hey, Bharos, if you pulled on Edward, you only have 2 turns in the whole fight.
But it would have been much easier if Charlotte just had reflect ring on her, because then I wouldn't have to waste a turn by doing
Or you
reflect.
could use Myra because she has an ability with that.
There is a point that Bharos has saying though, like if you don't have reflect ring, it does become harder to do the fight if it goes on longer. Like the only reason that Bharos brings this up is that if you don't have Edward, Shuen, or any of the big burst DPSs, the fight will go on forever. Might drag, and as soon as it drags, he starts using.
But that's not true though. Like I mean, if you can do it in 6 turns with Elena, this is really not a DPS thing. As long as you have the decent support for this trial, it becomes very easy.
But if you don't
trivial.
have reflect ring, it's gonna be really hard when he starts deathing you every second turn. Because sub 40%, he starts to do that. I think.
Would reflecting really help? It's random target.
No, because what's happening is that so this is how the mechanic works. He first casts a reflect on a random person, on a random unit, and then the second turn after the reflect, he goes through a check from slot 1 to slot 6. So if you have a reflect ring on the first slot, he will just use death on the first slot, and it will, negate the death. But if you don't have reflect ring, it would require either you A, evoke an AoE reflect every other turn, or B, have reflect up on slot 1 of the unit. If you don't burst it from 40%.
And I'm just going to say, I just brought up reflect ring as a side note, because that wasn't really the big issue. It was quite easy to shore up the reflect thing by just having reflect up on Charlotte all the time, so that wasn't really an issue. But the issue that I want to bring up, so again, I've said this a couple of times already, this is not a DPS trial. It's a support trial. And if you have the support units that can really give you everything you need turn one and kind of set you up for victory, you can do this with any DPS unit and it's going to be super easy. But having said that, I had a ton of fun designing different teams with my roster that has some serious support holes in it and beating the trial. Like, I was using units I had never used in my life before. So I really like this trial.
Oh, it's a great trial for team setups. I think it was a lot of fun. I think the hardest part is finding, well, for me, it was finding AoE DPS units, but I actually used Zidane on this trial. And one time I used Bharos as a friend unit, so thank you, Bharos. And Zidane is really, really good on this trial. And I actually used Sylvie to imbue lightning, which is a lot of fun. Sylvie's very good.
Yeah, you know who else is very good? I used Blossom Sage Sakura and Neverending Hope in another run to imbue lightning. So both of them are top tier units.
Yes, that's dedication. I like it.
I mean, you don't have to imbue lightning if your DPS is strong enough. But if you are using one of the weaker DPSs, doing lightning damage does give you an extra edge, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I did a run without any imbues on 2 Zidanes and did it. I don't remember the exact turn count, but I think it was like 10 maybe on the second phase.
And I think Dream has something to add.
Yeah, I was just going to say a bit with my clear, because my team wasn't the best setup for this, because on the first fight, I actually, even with Edward, I took 8 turns on the first fight, because just with the damage over time, keep knocking out some people at the start, and I didn't have any Mirage, so the AoE physical was quite rough in combination with that, and it was just hard to, get everyone up and apply them all the defensive buffs they needed in the same turn, so people kept dying, because I got in one good damage turn on, I think, 4 or 5, and knocked him to like 20%, and then obviously below 40 it's much rougher, so then I couldn't actually get my damage dealers up again to hit it, finish it off until 8 or 9. And then fight 2 just ended in 3 turns.
Yeah, I was going to say that the second fight is significantly easier than the first fight.
Yeah. If you have the burst though, that's the DPS.
Like I said, if you can kill the mini Boros right away in the second fight, it's very easy. If you can't, it's going to be really brutal, because the mini Boros are actually the scariest part of that phase. Not the big queen. It's the little guys. They hurt a lot if they stay alive. So
that's where you can actually get hurt.
Yeah, I think the first fight is more of a defensive check. The second one's more of an offensive check.
Yeah, if you look at their stats, the queen has 1700 mag. The little guys have 2500.
Yeah,
I agree with the mini bros being more dangerous. In my run, I killed the queen first before and left one of the mini bros alive. And turns out that Chow didn't die to the queen. He died to the mini bro.
Oh yeah, and they also spark chain with each other if there's more than one.
It was just one. One mini bro killed Chow. Just one of them.
Yeah, but he enrages when queen dies though.
But Chow, I mean, you use Chow. I think that's your first problem. So
have you seen my Chow? My Chow is tanky as heck, man.
I during my second run, I wanted to check if you needed a single target football, and Cecil can solo tank this trial, which is another big deal.
Jesus, can we stop talking about mode. Cecil? Yeah,
Cecil
I know.
makes this trial such an easy mode.
Yeah, but he looks ugly, so I didn't pull for him.
What? Cecil
looks fabulous. Look at his hair.
Cecil looks amazing.
He looks like a hobo in a spacesuit.
He looks like a shampoo commercial.
Yeah.
But I want to go back to something that Dream said. He was talking about this issue where, and I had the same experience. My very first run on Vines, I think it also took 7-8 turns or something to just stabilize after the turn 1. But the thing is, that's the cool part about it, because when you start building teams, the trial actually works like clockwork. So when you have a decent team, you're just going to be doing exactly the right things every turn for perfect action economy. Nobody's dying, and you're just going to start dealing damage and going through the trial, provided you can do all the things you actually have to do in the trial, which is Mirage, all ailments protection, charm and stop protection, reflect. You need to do, well, Mirage if you want, but yeah, you need to do buffs and turn 1 mitigation. No, I just want to say, like it's really cool when you get, like, there are so many pieces you need to slot in. So it was like building this puzzle of a team. So I was like doing weird shit, like having Provoke Evade 2B paired with Blossom Sage Sakura or a Hope and clearing the trial. I had a like Provoke Evade Serena with, like, it was so much fun. It was just fun.
Yeah, I will say this one is another one where Dr. Aiden really shines with his removal. And he has barriers for days on this trial. It's really good. It's really great.
Yeah. And Dr. Aiden also, like, he removes and vaccinates everybody. So it's like, he's a real doctor.
I was actually going to say that.
Everyone.
Thankfully,
I was
nobody on
actually
my
gonna
team's anti-vax.
Oh, gosh.
Oh god, no, Shadow, no.
We're not going to start that.
New units will now have a random chance to resist ailment buffs.
Please don't give them any ideas.
Yeah, we've given them so many ideas.
No, Bharos, no.
Okay.
All right, so
we need to get somebody else to edit the podcast, because that way we can edit out what Bharos said so that nobody else ever hears it. Because I don't want to fight that in arena.
Yeah. The turn 1 MP draining LB.
No, stop.
Like, you're gonna see it soon on a triple banner where the other 2 rainbows are absolute garbage, and there's no step up.
And I need to sleep tonight, and I don't want to have nightmares.
Should we vote to fire Bharos? Who votes yes?
Listen, Gumi, like, you just drop the lapis on the account that you normally do. We're all good.
all right, now we want to welcome in Meetmeonmars as our guest today. You've probably seen his Reddit posts, posting crazy clears. You've seen him on Twitch, seen him on YouTube. He's a content creator for both FFBE and War of the Visions. So thanks so much for coming on the podcast. Really happy to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Hazard. It's nice to be here.
I've had the pleasure of meeting you in person at the Long Beach Fan Festa, which was a lot of fun. It seems like so long ago, and yet it was really like 2 years, right? 2.5?
I don't even think it was 2 years, because I think it was not last December, but the previous, or November. Yeah, 2 Novembers previous. So like a year and a couple months.
Oh, those were the days.
I thought there wasn't a Fan Festa last year. There was one the year before that, right?
Yeah, I
then
think that
there was another one the year before that. Because I went to the last one they had, and you're talking about a different one.
No,
No,
there was
all
Long
the same
Beach
place.
and LA. I went to both of them.
Oh, okay.
Long Beach was where you met your hero, or you almost met your hero, Muspel.
Immortal Master?
The Katy Perry.
AI Katie is a good unit.
Oh my god, we can't go off on one episode without Muspel doing his plugs.
I know.
I think Katy
Back to our
Perry is one of the
actual
best units I ever pulled. So
Oh
Yes.
no.
Oh,
Marge is now a regular on the podcast.
So Mars is
Don't
now
put that on
officially
me.
a Muspel clone. That's the only thing I can say.
oh
about
no.
so I got a few questions for Mars to start off, and the first one is: who do you think you are, and what gives you the right? No, wait, I'm sorry. These are questions for Muspel later. I apologize. My actual question is: all right, the most important thing that everyone wants to know is who would win in a cage match between you and Muspel?
Oh, that's a difficult question to answer. I think it's probably going to be Muspel, mostly because I don't have enough time in the day to hear out all of his points. I'm a working man. I have a 40-hour work week, that I have to deal with, so I don't have the time to hear it.
Because I would start arguing with the cage.
He would come in thinking that his opponent was the cage.
The cage match. You fight the cage.
Oh boy.
Oh man, I can already imagine Muspel arguing hours against the wall and declaring that he won.
That's how I feel arguing against Muspel sometimes. He is the wall.
Ah.
Oh, well, actually, Mars, I did want to ask you, how did you get the name Meetmeonmars? Like, how did that become your well-known name?
Geez, it started when I was a wee lad, probably about like 8 years old. My dad was helping set me up with my first email, and I had always wanted to be the first astronaut on the planet Mars. That was like my childhood dream, and so just came up with the name Meetmeonmars, and it just became my tag and my name for basically everything for always and forever. So yeah, just because I wanted to be that first astronaut on the planet Mars. But instead, I live in a mother-in-law basement playing video games. So much for dreams.
You know, it's one of those shoot for the stars or shoot for the moon and land among the stars, right? This is the stars. Shoot for the Mars and end up in a desert in Midwestern USA.
Similar. But let's be precise. Your name isn't actually Meet Me on Mars on Reddit. It's me 33 Tim 3 on Mars. So
yeah, because some bastard already took my name on Reddit.
Wow.
They knew I was going to be Mr. Worldwide, and they took my name.
I feel really sorry for the guy that has Hazard's name on Reddit because I think he keeps getting pinged. Because Hazard's Reddit username is Hazard_GL.
Is it?
It is,
Yeah.
yeah. Mars, you're not. You wouldn't happen to have any relation to Neptune's man, right? Because you're both named after planets.
No. In fact, he and I couldn't be further apart. We actually probably have about as much real distance between us as the actual planet Mars and the actual planet Neptune.
I miss him, though. I do miss him being on the Reddit.
Did he get driven out of town or something?
He never posted again after that Christine thread where everybody made fun of him.
Yeah, that was a good one. I remember that. I had a good laugh about that.
Sinzar just tried that strat the other day with Palom and Porum because they're locked to fire, and it was really funny to watch him use Tsukiko's TMR and do like 10% damage.
Fire whip.
No, Fire Whip wouldn't even
It's
help
like-
if they're locked to fire. They need to not.
Oh, that's true.
Option.
No, it was a Tsukiko TMR that he used, and it was just hilarious how awful it was.
Well, if he was using a good mage like Christine, maybe it would have gone better.
Oh wow!
Or just used her as a finisher. That quadruples her damage.
Yeah, I would be willing to bet that Sinzar was simply using Christine wrong, and it's basically his fault.
Okay, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, I mean,
If there's one thing we know about Sinzar, it's that he's not good at coming up with strategies for bosses.
oh no, definitely.
Yeah.
He's terrible at that.
I've never seen him do that.
Speaking of coming up with strategies, I think that's probably how you gained your fame. That at least that's how I remember seeing you the first time, was you coming up with some really weird strats early in the days of FFBE, using units I would have never thought to use. I wanted to ask you, what was your most enjoyable trial, or maybe your most enjoyable team comp in a trial?
I think for that one, it would have to go to the original Malboro for global, and that's because that fight basically made my channel, because it was super hard for people for a long time, and anytime a new character came out or a character got enhancements or whatever, it was all about, all right, let's see what they can do against Rumble and Malboro. Can they take it out? How quickly does it go down and stuff like that? So I really enjoyed that fight. And it was kind of where I had my first self-invented party to beat it, because I didn't have all the other stuff that people were using. So the first party I ever used, and I don't have it on video, unfortunately. I've thought about going back and reenacting it. But the first party I ever used to beat Rumble of Malboro was Snow, Ace, 2 Rikus, and 2 Veritas of the Light, because that was what I had. And it was, the double re-raise with Snow using draw attacks and defend and all this other stuff. And it was like a real tooth and nail sort of fight. And it was really fun. It was like my introduction to just figuring stuff out on my own. So I definitely owe it to that trial, because I probably have like 50 different videos from years past of me beating Rumble of Malboro. But no other trial even comes close to that in terms of number of videos I've done on it.
I remember Light Veritas. I remember you highlighting her in those videos because I had never thought of using her before, and I wished I had her at the time, and I wish she was still good today. But alas.
Yeah, that was the seeds of my own brand, because I got so peeved just like seeing people disparage my bae, the Veritas of the Light, back when she was cool, not Citra or whatever the hell. I absolutely loved using her, and I knew from the moment I saw her in JP, I was like, I gotta get this unit, she's awesome, whatever. And then when she came out, everybody's like, yeah, she's not that good. I was like, okay, listen. Where else are you gonna get a 6-star unit with a 74% defense and spirit? Like, listen, you gotta give her a break. Like, come on. So that was the beginning of like the seeds of angst that drove me to content creation, which I think is how most people get started, is seeds of angst.
Yeah, she was also one of the very few AoE chainers at the time, I think.
Exactly.
Which was what made her so good for Malboro, because there was like her and 2B, and that was about it.
Yeah, A2 and 2B I think had AoEs, and then Onion Knight I think came out shortly after, like within a week of Rumble of Malboro, and he had AoE.
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
Pod 153 was the only other option, basically.
Yeah, the whale strat on that was Tillith and 2 A2s with pods.
And then Trans-Terra Enhancement, you're right. And then
Yeah.
And Barbaricio was also a really good one when she came out as well.
But that was later, I think.
Yeah, that was not till December. I think it came out in September, I want to say, is when Malboro came out.
November.
Like in hindsight, I liked that they did this, but I think that in a modern context, they would have waited another few months to release Malboro because we just didn't have the right units for it. And I don't, as much as it was fun for veterans to play around in that space and see how to beat a super hard trial, it was just really rough for most people, and I think it kind of made some people mad.
One of the things that
go ahead.
Okay, one of the things that we talked about in this podcast previously was that we think Kiraja basically broke the game and got rid of all these ridiculously hard trials. And I want to see, Mars, what you think about that. Like when Malboro first came out, and I think even Igon trial when it first came out, it was like rough for everybody except for the mega whales. And we haven't had that sort of trial in a long time. And I think we attribute that to the creation of Kiraja. What do you think has made trials so much easier recently?
I don't necessarily attribute it to Kiraja. I think that specifically for Malboro, there were two main factors that made that fight extremely difficult. The first was that the only tank in the game that actually could tank it and survive it was essentially Wilhelm, and that was it. So if you didn't have Wilhelm, you had no way to tank the tentacle whatever attack, which usually resulted in a wipe.
Could do it.
Oh yeah, and Noel, which basically
was he still bugged then?
I think he was still bugged then, but even if he wasn't, basically nobody had him. So, even fewer people had him than had Wilhelm. And then the other factor, of course, was the AoE damage. So I think when they started enhancing or releasing other tanks that were able to, to handle that made it easier. Like I think I got Gladiolus as like my first like 5-star base tank, and he could tank that just fine. And that made it a lot easier for me going back to the fight. But I think speaking to Igaion and specifically like Kiraja, it wasn't for the Kiraja that I needed Ayaka to clear Igaion. It was for the re-raise. Because again, there wasn't a tank that could handle the arm laser, and I had to use an Ayaka friend because I swung and missed on that banner. So I took an Ayaka friend and used her for re-raise. And that for me was like the big factor for beating that one. Because I don't think healing quantity has ever been an issue of like, I don't have enough healing to top anybody off. Because if that was ever an issue, I would use characters like Arya and stuff like that who could just full heal or provide other things like that.
I think that back in the day, it mattered more because if not having enough healing was enough of a concern that you would adjust your team comp for. Nowadays, it feels like every single healer, just if they heal, the team is at full. There's very rare exceptions to that, and even then, it's barely. Like maybe you're a few thousand HP short of full, which is for a tank like 15 or 20% of their health, maybe. But back in the day with dual cast Kiraga, it was you would maybe be able to heal for like 2,000 or 3,000 a turn, and you would probably run out of MP. So it felt more like you were trying to bail out a ship with a bucket than just constantly topping everybody off every turn.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just don't think I ever saw a time where I was like, man, I'm dying because I'm not getting topped off. So maybe that's just my experience versus others. I think tanking was initially like one of my hugest pain points.
Mine was the MP restore, actually. I remember I could not do Sheraton because I didn't have anyone to restore MP. That was pretty awful for me.
I think the MP drain happened after 49% or something, and then you needed to kill the fruits ASAP.
Yeah, that was tough too because you had to do AoE damage, or you had to one-shot each turn, basically.
Mm-hmm.
It's really interesting to see how they moved away from a bunch of early, I guess, constraints on what units can do. Like MP used to matter. Nowadays, odds are that your team comp can just sustain MP indefinitely. It's very rare to have a setup that can't do that, and if they can't, it means you messed up badly. But it used to be there was basically just a turn limit on fights. You would run out of MP.
And I remember resorting to items, or what was that unit that had an AoE?
Ilias.
Yeah, Ilias. Ilias was a godsend sometimes, just because like he could. AoE imply MP regen to everybody.
That's why Noctis was top tier. He could restore MP.
Oh,
Well,
that's why.
part of it.
You know, what's funny is Ilias strat on the Nightmare Skeleton King for Halloween. That was my first post on Reddit, was how to do that trial with Ilias.
Oh, so that was you.
Yeah, that was my like claim to fame a long time ago. Not that I ever had any fame, but I think
you showed up on my radar when you had the Merc Ramza post, because I'd pulled him like 8 times and I wanted to shoot myself. I was like sick and tired of Ramza showing up, and I was like, man, this is horrible. And I saw your post where you're like, here's what I recommend for Ramza enhancements to make him viable. And then they basically did that, and I was like, all right, whoever made that post is a baller. I like that guy.
Or he's a Gumi spy. I mean, we don't know yet. So.
Yeah, but I started a YouTube channel specifically to show off Night Delete It in like a series of different trials. I remember that. I had him tank Aranea without evasion. I just built an entire team to keep him alive and watch him counter her to death, and it was amazing.
Did you use like Oran's TM or something? I
used Oran's TM. Yes, I did. Because he had 40% MIT, which was amazing at the time, but it was only single target. You had to actually equip it as materia. I used Onion Knight for breaks, I want to say, something else. Or I think, LB Generation or something like that. But I basically, an entire team built around Night Deleted. The video's still up. You guys can go watch it. It's one of my greatest achievements in life.
Hey, so I have another question for Mars, if it's okay.
Of course.
Mars, now I know that you have your favorite units. And we all know that Hyo is clearly one of your favorites, if people couldn't guess. But there's also Edgar that you vouch for greatly. And I recently saw, I've been seeing that you really like Furion. And I want you to defend Furion just like I do every week.
Please make Shadow feel good about his choices.
Exactly.
No, that's easy. Furion is amazing for anybody who is willing to work with a couple of constraints, because if you follow, a prescribed rotation that somebody posts on the internet, you're not going to get very much value out of him. But if you just throw caution to the wind and fill his LB every turn, fill that boy up with some bean soup, he can do more damage than most characters in the game. So, I'm a huge fan of that. I like characters that use their LB and use it a lot. So Furion to me was like, oh, he's basically Esther, except way better, and his LB does a crap load of damage. So, I was drawn to that, and you just gotta pop off that LB as much as you can. I don't use him very much anymore because I have to sacrifice a lot of survivability to get the max EP on that guy. So I've fully committed to the monk life with Madame Adele and Sabin instead. But Furion's amazing. I love him.
Thank you for coming to his TED Talk.
We talked about some different mechanics. We talked about Karaja and the effect it's had in the game. And I think a lot of those old trials were really a struggle, as you and Muspel were saying. But it seems like these days the trials have higher penalties. It seems like it's like if you screw a mechanic up, you die. Someone gets dead on your team. But I feel like, I don't know, and maybe call me out on this, the trials themselves are overall easier, or maybe we just have a lot more options to deal with the trials. I'm wondering, like, in your opinion, what can Gumi do to prevent those kinds of things from becoming stale or routine? Because it seems like within 10 minutes of a trial releasing, people are posting on Reddit their clears. Like, people are just face rolling these things.
Yeah, I think the main problem that I have with trials right now, and this is a large part of why I'm feeling a little bit burnt out on the game just in general, is because all of the fights are homogenized. You have an entire roster of units that can provide you full spectrum immunity to every status ailment in the game, and you can have 200% resistance to every element in the game, and you can have stat buffs of 250% to every stat in the game, and you just go into a fight with all of those, and that basically nullifies every mechanic that isn't a fixed attack. So the only way that Gumi can actually make a fight dangerous is by throwing fixed damage at you, which feels like bullshit, So nobody likes that, but it's basically their only way to force you into actually taking any damage in a trial. And so I agree to the sentiment that, there's a lot of face roll going on. And if you do it wrong, your whole team gets wiped, rather than what we had before balance-wise, where it was like, okay, I screwed up and one or two people died, but let's see if we can recover it. There was a lot more recovery happening in trials, but now it's, all right, did you gear up for the only mechanic in the fight, which is this fixed attack or this multi-fixed attack or this single target death or whatever? Like, did you gear up for that only mechanic that you have to worry about? Yes. All right, then you're good. If not, then, your whole team will die and you'll have to come back in and try it again until you figure out what it is, or you read one of Sinzar's guide to have him tell you what the mechanic was that you died to. That's my take on trials right now anyways.
I think Shinryu was sort of an attempt to see if there was a way to around this, because I think the random death was sort of intended to make people respond and actually think about what they were doing, because you can't really predict exactly what it's going to do. And I think in some ways it worked. It wasn't a great design, but it wasn't awful either, just because the rest of the fight was relatively easy.
Yeah. I agree.
I initially thought that I would dislike Shinryu intensely because I don't care for RNG principally, but I actually really enjoyed Shinryu. I was like, even though it's a little bit power crept, our damage dealers are far and beyond, what they were in JP for this fight. I still had a lot of fun with that one. But you compare that to like the Scorn of the Venomous Vines, it's literally exactly what I said, where there's literally two mechanics in the whole fight, which is, okay, you get hit by this fixed attack and, you got single target death. If you handle those two mechanics and you're equipped to resist or immune or whatever the rest of it, there's not a lot else going on.
And I like your point about how all of our units have become like such a catch-all. Like I realized that for the last 3 trials that we did, my team hasn't changed. It's always been AWOL, Cecil, Breaker, DPS, and Dr. Iden. Like that that format never changes and it always works. And nothing really challenges me to change it. So I think it's an issue with our units as well as the designs of the trials itself right now.
I think part of the problem is that Alum and Gumi they've basically made it so that, like you say, we can become immune to virtually everything that's dangerous, and the only things that we can't become immune to are just so crippling that they can't use them too much. Like, they can't use Snort very often. They can't use Kill. They can't use, what's the other one? Zombie that much. Because those are the things that we can't really deal with on any meaningful level.
And that's why I think I really like Telful Sonus to a certain degree, because Telful Sonus as a trial had had Kill if you didn't do a certain thing, so you could counter it. But it was 3 different fights where it was a bit different from each other, and I think that's the only way you can challenge it, is that one team needs to do everything. And I think that's why Telful Sonus was a bit more fun than the other trials, because you didn't have to equip for 1 or 2 mechanics or one fight. You had to equip for 3 very different fights with 3 different damage dealing types as well.
I agree. I think Telful Sonus, I hated the fixed party trial part of it, where you had to go in with like Locke and Terra and Darkfina or whoever.
Oh, that was bad.
I hated that part. If we never saw that again, I'd be thrilled, because
I think it was a cool idea, but the teams they gave us were so bad.
Yeah, and the problem I had with it is that it was formulaic, where if you just copied whatever somebody else did, you would always get a clear every time, and I don't really care for that. But I think Telful Sonus was really well designed in the fact that, like, you had multiple types of mechanics you had to go up against, so you couldn't just be like, all right, this is a magic heavy trial, so I'm going to take Cecil, and all I need is 1 stack of Mirage, and I'll be fine to handle the only other mechanic that will hit me, and we'll be good to go. But you had to gear for 3 different bosses. I think the only thing I would have tweaked on that fight is making it so that it doesn't favor hybrids as heavily as it did. I don't mind if there's like a minor favor towards hybrids, but it really, like, you did substantially less damage against one boss with physical, substantially less magic against the other. I prefer it when you can kind of pick and choose who you want to go in with.
I think I agree that the way that, maybe to answer the question I originally had is, and we've kind of answered it, is to the global exclusive trials that we didn't know were coming and have these like interesting mechanics or multi-battles have been the most successful in my mind. And I think they need to do more and more of those things.
Yeah, and Chamber of Vengeance, or the Chamber of the Vengeful, was actually a lot of fun because it forced you to use 25 or 50 different units on the same trial. And I actually had a lot of enjoyment in that. It stretched my team very thin, and I think that's probably another way they could make the game a bit more difficult, is that, hey, you need to reach in and find all and get creative with your team comps. I guess that's what
my theory is that Chamber of the Vengeful was a lot less popular than they expected. Like, some people really like that aspect of it. I think a lot of people just only ever cleared it once and never went back. And I would bet that's why we're not getting more Vengeful bosses.
Didn't they say that Telphosaurus took much more resources than they thought, and that's why we're getting less
My
vengeful?
theory is that the 3 Telphosaurus bosses were planned to be Chamber of the Vengeful bosses, and instead of following them
Oh,
up, they just released them as an event.
interesting.
Tinfoil hats on.
Yeah. And I agree with Chamber of the Vengeful. I think with the first one, they had the formula right where they had a boss with mechanics that you had to pay attention to, and you took, a plethora of different units into. And they didn't make it so hard or so punishing that, like, okay, like Morgana is a good example. The Chamber of Vengeful for Morgana. I only took Elena in there because if I took any other damage dealer in there, it was so much harder to fight it. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to use Elena. I'm going to make this fight super easy. But for Exterminator, it didn't matter as much. You could use whatever physical damage dealer you wanted, whatever magic tank you wanted, whatever healer you wanted, and you could make it work. And it included HP thresholds, which I think are one of the best mechanics in the game to make it so that, like, yeah, lower the boss's HP pool, lower their defense or spirit, and add HP locks. That way you can use basically any character you want to. So I think for that one, they had the formula locked down pretty well. But I didn't super love the other ones that came after.
You didn't love that the Elite Exterminator was much, much harder than the Legend version?
Okay, so I sent a bug ticket about that. I contacted Gumi and was like, excuse me, you do realize that the boss is erasing buffs and wiping my whole team, right? And they're like, yeah, that's intended. I was like, all right, I'm out. I'm done.
I think there's somebody at Gumi that doesn't understand that if the boss uses an attack and match buff and then attacks, then the party's going to die. Because we've had like 2 or 3 different GLX bosses by now that do that, and every single time it's a shit show.
That's why I love the Skeleton King so much. Is he was like, oh, let me take all of your party's MP, and the MP is my power source. Now that I have full power, I'm going to destroy your entire party because I've also lowered your fire and dark resistance, and now I'm doing fire and dark attacks. Congratulations, you're dead. That was basically that fight for the first day.
Yeah.
And shout out to anyone who has double serpent maces for beating it.
Oh my god.
The true heroes in FFBE.
Oh man.
I don't know if I have 2 of those. I should check.
Oh shoot, Mars.
I know I beat it. I think it was because I didn't care about the Serpent Mace, so I might not have gone back for the second one.
It's all about the EP. It's just the trophy.
Just put that on the shelf.
What I kind of like to see for trial design is I think they need to experiment a bit more with mechanics. Like, if there was a boss that just reduced healing done by like 90% and then did what would be relatively low damage, but you were really, really struggling to keep your party topped off, then maybe you would use a different team comic. Like maybe you run 2 healers instead of a buffer. And just stuff that makes us do things that are different than a tank, a breaker, a healer, probably a buffer or a second tank, and 2 chainers.
Yeah, agreed. Although I feel like that specific example is meant to make Dr. Aiden look bad.
Yeah,
and I take offense to that, sir.
I think that mechanic would be cool too, because I could see it favoring healers that do like a fixed amount of healing, like Awakened Rain.
I think they would have to reduce that. Otherwise, everyone would
reduce that too. Yeah.
Yeah. So like Tillith would heal for 10% of the party's health instead of 100%.
Yeah, but that would only benefit like the 5 people that have Tillith right now.
The Tillith meta will return.
I remember pulling for Tillith. It was a shit show.
I did not get her. I got both of the other ones twice.
Oh, I got Tillith. I ended up getting Tillith.
Oh, then you had nothing to complain about.
Yeah, okay, I swung and missed for Tillith, so I started using Arya instead and closed my eyes real hard and pretended like I had Tillith.
I used enhanced Luca. That was really good.
When I actually enhanced Luca, and I super regret it. I felt like she was super underwhelming.
Yeah, I don't think Luca's enhancements really did much to put her over Refia.
Yeah, people were like, oh, her healing is so high. And I was like, cool, I'll enhance her then. And then I looked at her healing and was like, nope, it's still bad.
I think Rosa was underrated in hindsight.
And White Witch Fina.
Well, no, Rosa had the LB that restored, like, even at 5-star, 79% of the party's HP, 39% of MP. That's an incredible amount of MP for back in the day when MP batteries just didn't exist.
I kind of miss these days. Now it feels like you can only do trials with 7-star units
unless
it's like a healer.
I think we're looking back with rose-colored lenses and not remembering all the awful stuff like Troll Rainbows, 1% rainbow rate, the split 3-star pool where 80% of your blue crystals were like Beguile and Rakshasa.
They were just that was an early promotion of War of the Visions because both of those units are from Ardra. They were thinking way ahead.
Speaking of War of the Visions, how are you liking War of the Visions, Hazard? And Mars, I guess. The two of you that are playing it.
Hazard, he asked you first.
I like the game style. I like the battle mechanics because I'm a big tactics fan, obviously. The grindiness is a lot, as people said, but the rewards for it aren't so amazing that you really feel like it's necessary to constantly be grinding everything, except for maybe event units that are limited, which the only thing I don't like for real is that they're going to have collaborations of Final Fantasy units that are limited and not unlimited. And that makes me a little bit mad.
Yeah, I don't actually share that opinion because I love original characters. Brave Exvius' original characters are some of my favorite, and some of the characters I plan on getting in War of the Visions are also originals. So I'm a huge fan of originals, mostly because I'm a fake fan for Final Fantasy. I've actually only ever played like 2 of the games all the way through, so I'm kind of crap like that. But overall, I think War of the Visions is quite a bit of fun. I've been playing it basically nonstop since it came out. I do sense that once I'm kind of over that initial mountain of, getting characters leveled and enhanced and all that other stuff, there's not going to be as much to do. So, I'm not saying it's a perfect game or it's the most fun ever. I'm enjoying it a lot right now. I'm not over that mountain yet. Once I am, though, that's when I'm going to be looking at Gumi to be like, all right, let's deliver some content now. I know you can do it. Pull it out from somewhere.
Do we know they can do it?
We see it probably 2 or 3 times a year. Yeah.
I think they've shown recently they're doing much better. Like Telphosaurus, I think, is a great example. Gumi can do it. It's just they clearly don't have the manpower to do it consistently.
That's the problem is when what they do that's exclusive is almost always good and almost always better than whatever JP was doing at the same time. And I really wish we had more of it because I think they've done a great job in a lot of areas.
And I think the only thing that JP did that I'm still missing out on was Tower. Like, I really wish we got Tower. And I know that Dark Visions is supposed to be an improved version of Tower, but it's just that in terms of like content in FFBE specifically, it's really mundane. Like, if there's the weekly events that are super easy for veterans, and then there's now the trials, which turn out to be super easy too. But I feel like with Telphosaurus, it was a long time goal. Hey, can you reach X number of clears? And for Chamber of Vengeful, also X number of clears, and Dark Visions as well. But Tower was something I was looking forward to a lot, but didn't happen.
And I think the problem is that if it came out now, it doesn't look like it would be that hard by modern standards. Like all she does is punch units in specific slots. She has no like mechanics other than hitting a few units.
I really wish we got an endless dungeon mode in FFBE, and I think.
Do you though?
I think that would be difficult to tune because, like, if you make the difficulty go up constantly as you go through, which I assume is what you want, you reach a point where everything is a one shot. Because we don't really have a good way to scale up unit survivability.
Maybe, yeah. I just feel like in terms of content in FFB, there's another area that they could do, but we haven't reached it yet.
That's true. And I want to ask Mars about it is what's on your wish list? Like, if you could have FFBE add anything or include anything, like what would it be?
Or remove anything for that matter.
Or yeah.
I don't think they need to remove anything, because if there's content you don't like, you can just not play it, But I think the number one thing on my wish list right now is actually a Chamber of Arms 2, because I felt like this. I loved everything about the Chamber of Arms. I understand that, like, yeah, some of them came to us and were power crept, but it didn't really matter. You could use whatever damage dealer you wanted to, whatever team comp you wanted to. They were tuned for creativity and they were tuned for all sorts of stuff. And I thought the boss sprites were the best boss sprites in the game. They had transformations and stages, and many, not all, of the weapons were useful in some way, unique, or offered something valuable. Like Sasuke's katana was really, really handy to pick up at the time. And so it was that combination of like meaningful challenge, combination of like good rewards, like something you could work for, and the combination of like, you know what, there's no like best way to do this. You don't have to have like Mirage full evade, blah, 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 draw attacks, this, that, or the other, like hyper sweaty nerd meta comp to beat it. It was, here's a few principles you got to follow. Here's what happens on the HP thresholds, deal with those things, and you got it in the bag. And I really I love those. So if I got to see a Chamber of Arms 2, that would make me super happy.
As Dream once said, Chamber of Legs, please.
I couldn't agree more, Mars. That I completely agree. Chamber of Arms is one of the best things they've ever done, and they should do more of it.
And I think the reason we like it so much is because there's one inherent flaw with FFB is that you rely so much on friend units, and sometimes it's really difficult to find that specific friend unit, especially if you're using a DPS that's not meta. Like, let's just say I want to use a shadow to clear something. Well, that's going to be really hard to find a shadow friend with the correct killers and survivability equipped. So, but Chamber of Arms was like, no, you don't have to spend like 3 hours looking for the correct friend. You can just
Instead,
go
you
in.
just have to spend 3 hours gearing.
Yeah, and it was tuned to accommodate the fact that you didn't have both of your chainers with like the right killers on it. Like, it didn't matter because the DPS check wasn't insane, and that's ultimately like my biggest frustration for like creating content right now, because I'm not my wallet for Brave Exvius is completely closed. Madame Adele was the last banner I pulled on, and will probably remain the last banner I pull on for the foreseeable future, even looking at JP right now. Just because, you know, I don't need anything else. You know, all the content can be beaten with her and all the other stuff I have. So, you know, we're gonna stick with what we got. But the point is, God, what was the point? I get so ranty sometimes. Is that man? Where was I going with that? I just got so mad at JP for a second that I blacked out and forgot what I was saying.
What about Dark Visions? I think Dark Visions might bring you back.
No, I don't think so. I think Dark Visions is basically a reiteration of what people already do in Trials, where it's just a one and done. You just go in and one shot it and leave and take your reward. I think Dark Visions is pretty much the same thing.
Okay. So Mars, if people want to see your Adele clears for the next year and a half, where should they find you?
Meetmeonmars on Twitch or on YouTube. That's where you can find me.
Well, thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. It was a fun discussion to take a little trip down memory lane at some of the old fun trials that we got, and also to hear your thoughts on some of the things that Gumi can do to change the fortunes of FFBE. And also, you know, you've got some great War of the Visions guides that have helped me out a lot, so you guys should definitely check that out as well. But I just want to thank you again for coming.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming out.